Game News USA here, back today with another top 10. We are going to count down the top 10 Donkey Kong games of all time, according to me. So keep in mind, guys, this is just my own personal list. You all can have your own list, and we can compare and contrast. So, with that being said, let's jump right into it. Number 10 is Donkey Kong Jungle Beat from the GameCube. At the time, I remember this game getting a lot of hate, because I think a lot of people wanted to go back to the country style, and we didn't get that. We got kind of a bang the drums kind of game, but it didn't take away from the fact the game was still fun. It was still fun. You know, so it makes the list, but just barely. Number 9, Mario vs. Donkey Kong on the Game Boy Advance. Yes, there was definitely other Mario vs. Donkey Kong games. Yes, I've kind of played them all, and when the remake came out, I didn't buy the remake of Mario vs. Donkey Kong. I didn't feel it was necessary to remake the game. They should have just relaunched the Game Boy Advance game on NSO, but, you know, Nintendo's got to do that cash grab, so they did what they did. Played the demo for it. It was fine. You know, I think number 9 is the proper spot for the Mario vs. Donkey Kong game, and I picked the original one from the series of that. Number 8, how about Donkey Kong Land 3 for the Game Boy? Yes, there's like 3 different Donkey Kong lands I could have chose from. I decided to go with Donkey Kong Land 3. It's so technically impressive to see that game on the Game Boy. It's crazy they got that to work. It looks like Super Nintendo on handheld. It's crazy, honestly. I'm more impressed with the technical aspects of this game than I actually am the game itself, which is usually not the case for me because I'm not much of a techie kind of guy. But I'm just super impressed it even got on the Game Boy. And I think Donkey Kong Land 3 is the best of the 3 Donkey Kong lands, and that's why it lands at number 8. Number 7, the original Donkey Kong from the arcade, Jumpman versus Donkey Kong. Jumpman trying to save Pauline. We all know Jumpman turns into Mario eventually. But this 1981 arcade classic was super fun to play. It's really short. It's only like 3 or 4 levels, I think. And then you just keep replaying it and try to rack up the score. You gotta jump over barrels. You're playing as Mario, Jumpman. And you're jumping over barrels and smashing barrels and running up ladders and trying to get to Pauline. And it has a definitive boss fight at the end versus Donkey Kong, which makes it a little different than other arcade games that are just running in endless loops. You actually can see Donkey Kong get defeated by Jumpman. And so, for that, I think it was a little ahead of its time, and it was just a really fun arcade game that, you know, every now and again, I'll still fire up and play it. Why not? 5 minutes, let's play the 3 levels, and let's have fun. So it's number 7 on the list. Number 6 on the list, Donkey Kong 64 from the Nintendo 64. Now, I agree that it's not as good as its 2D counterparts, but I do think this game can get a lot of hate when I don't think it's really that much worse than how good Banjo-Kazooie was. I really think that, you know, at this point when this game came out, we were tapped out on collectathons. We already had Super Mario 64. We already had Banjo-Kazooie. I believe we already had Banjo-Tooie. So by the time you actually got to Donkey Kong 64, the collectathons were running amok with as far as like how much you had to do in order to 100% the game. So I think that's where it gets a lot of flack. But if you just play the game and not worry too much about collecting literally everything, you probably still have fun with Donkey Kong 64. I would love to bring back a 3D Donkey Kong in the future. Or even a Donkey Kong that's more in the style of Kirby Forgotten Land. I'd like to see what they would do with that, because I think for the most part they've mastered 2D Donkey Kongs, which are the top 5 of this list. So, Donkey Kong Country, that series is the last 5 on this list, obviously. Starting with number 5, Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze for the Wii U. Many people will argue this is the best. And this is where you can get a lot of disagreement about which Donkey Kong Country game is actually the best Donkey Kong Country game. Tropical Freeze was great, but like I said, number 5. Because number 4 is Donkey Kong Country Returns, which I thought was the better game. You'll all see that when it comes to Switch in January. I thought Returns had better boss fights. I thought it had better level design. And so I give Returns the slight nod at number 4. But then we get to the top 3. They're going to be the Super Nintendo Donkey Kong Country games. But in what order? So number 3 is Donkey Kong Country 3. Which is called Donkey Kong Country 3. On the Super Nintendo. And honestly, I think this game might have come out even after the N64 was already out. It went under the radar. It's still a solid entry, but I don't think a lot of people really appreciated having Diddy Kong be replaced by that Baby Kong. And I think that's where some of the criticism comes in. But don't let that stop you from realizing this game is almost as good as the first 2 Donkey Kong Countries. It's definitely worth a try if you passed on it or never played it for whatever reason. That's why it's number 3 on the list. Number 2, how about the original Donkey Kong Country? What a way to reinvent a character. What a way to reintroduce a character. Donkey Kong with Diddy Kong. And making this new franchise that was freaking awesome. And usually, the original would be number 1 on a list. You know, it was for Metroid Prime. But unless the sequel was able to come along and do it just way better. And that brings me to number 1 on the list. It's Gerard the Completionist's favorite game. You've been hearing it in the background music, the main menu, the whole time. Number 1 Donkey Kong game, for me, is definitely Donkey Kong Country 2, Diddy's Kong Quest. Why? I actually think switching out Donkey Kong for Dixie Kong was genius. I think that those 2 characters are really good for platforming and it opened up more possibilities. You had better level design, refined tech, better graphics, better gameplay. The animal creatures you hop on were fun. The different worlds you could explore. I thoroughly enjoyed this game. And honestly, you know, I love 2D Mario games. You guys know this. But as far as non-2D platformers go, that are non-Mario 2D platformers go, this has to rank right at the top. Like, above a Kirby Return to Dreamland. Above even a Rayman Legends. If I had to pick one 2D platformer, non-Mario, it would be Donkey Kong Country 2. And that is why it's number 1 on the list. Guys, thank you for watching the video. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Please remember to hit that subscribe button. And I'm out. Peace. Have a good one.